I've been working my entire life to finally show this to you. Okay, ready?
Hey guys, it's the Melblade 5. Hey guys, it's the Melblade 5, and welcome to my response to modern SMG4. Over the past couple of years, I never would have imagined myself making this kind of video, but eventually I couldn't help but feel this way, so here we are. For anyone who has no idea what I'm referring to, SMG4 is a YouTube machinima series consisting of Super Mario 64 bloopers. But unlike many other channels that do this sort of thing, SMG4 contains tons of humor that leans more towards the dark and offensive side, like the kind of stuff you'd expect to see on Family Guy. With many of these jokes involving the spoofed versions of the featured characters, the ridiculous plots of each episode, and lots of memes. I first discovered SMG4 at around, I want to say mid-2012, when a video titled A Day Without Peach popped up in the YouTube recommendations. The video is basically about Mario and Toad getting high on drugs. And from watching that, and then other episodes that got recommended to me afterwards, I thought it was the funniest shit I had ever seen. On top of how funny the jokes were, was the absurd parodies he made of the characters. Mario is a fat idiot who's obsessed with spaghetti and gets naked a bunch. Luigi is gay. That's it. Bowser started off as a serious villain, but later became a childish, wimpy dumbass who neglects his kids. Even extending to the side characters such as the Teletubbies, don't ask, who are psychopaths that smoke weed every day. The list goes on. Eventually, I managed to watch every single episode that had been uploaded at the time, and left waiting for new ones to come out. SMG4 was one of the first channels I subscribed to after making my YouTube account, and I've watched it all these years. However, that has now left me in an awkward situation in regards to my feelings towards this series. I honestly didn't even realize I felt this way myself until fairly recently, but over the past several years, I haven't been enjoying SMG4 as much as I used to. Once the idea popped into my head, I had somewhat of an epiphany, where thinking back on my impressions of many of the newer episodes, I realized this to be true. Even looking at my liked videos playlist further backs this train of thought, as the frequency and gaps between SMG4 videos is far greater compared to the past, where almost every episode ended up on there. And that's not even taking into account the upload dates between them, which would show an even greater distance. And as a result of all this thinking back, I came to realize why I haven't been enjoying the newer episodes. And all those issues have become more noticeable to me in the episodes following my epiphany, and bother me so much to the point that I wanted to make a response. For starters, the most general and fundamental issue I have with the modern episodes is that the humor has simply declined, where nowadays they are mostly boring and unfunny compared to the quality of the past. It's like modern Simpsons, where it's a hollow shell of its former self. We're even at the point where they're copying older episodes, but making them worse. To set some ground area for my reasoning, the very early episodes are really funny, but of course have shown their age over time. Then I'd say around 2014 to early 2017 was peak SMG4 for me. It's when the humor was at its best, the plot of most episodes felt very engaging despite how wacky they were, the editing had improved, and the usage of memes and voice clips was hilarious in how they were effectively used as substitutes for dialogue and added extra punch to the punchline of jokes. You could argue that he went a bit overboard with the voice clips, and I didn't like how characters like X and FM got pushed to the side and made irrelevant starting here, but the good severely outweighed the few negatives I had. It's not like the series instantly became worse after the peak period, but it's where the issues I've had with it over the past 2 years really started to show their ugly heads. Getting back on track, the humor in the new episodes lacks that punch in terms of things like comedic timing, any shock factor, the writing, and even the punchline itself, which also applies to how they utilize the voice clips. Even the usage of memes doesn't feel the same, as sometimes they'll just throw in a meme for the sake of it without doing anything funny with it, and in some cases they even use memes that are already dead at the time of the upload date. Over the past few months, I found myself re-watching the older episodes, from both the peak period and before that, and I was laughing more often and way harder than anything I've really done since the modern era began, as well as just having a fun time. This was the exact thing that made me realize I wasn't enjoying the newer episodes. For example, one of the funniest moments in my opinion comes from an early episode where Mario tries to kill himself because of a ban on spaghetti.
Don't do this! Suicide is a permanent answer to a temporary problem. There's so much to—
I don't give a shit!
The first time I saw that, I was dying of laughter from the whole setup and the "I don't give a shit" being used in that context. Meanwhile, the new episodes don't really have anything like that. Of course, there have been modern episodes I've really enjoyed and found funny, like Wario tries to stop himself from dying, If Mario Was in Fall Guys, and If Mario Was Among Us. But they are the exception rather than the norm. What we get the rest of the time isn't very good. Another major issue I have with the modern content, and this is something I've always felt at the back of my mind, but only properly recognized after my epiphany, is the characters. Specifically, over the past couple of years, they have introduced tons of original characters who become part of the main cast, and this has only become more frequent as time's gone on. Not only does the existence of original characters go against part of the hilarity of SMG4, being how he takes these pre-existing characters and makes ridiculous parodies out of them, but most of the original characters are, in my opinion, boring, unfunny, incredibly forced in, and take away from the enjoyment of the series. Now, there are a few original characters I don't dislike. I have mixed feelings of Fishy Boopkins, where I think he can be funny when used well, like acting as the butt of an occasional joke, but could also be the opposite and outright cringy, which sadly is all that he is since they decide to make him part of the main cast, as he's not the kind of character who works as the focal point of an episode, where he now feels very forced in. They also randomly decide to make him a weeb at some point, which they use to have him almost exclusively make cringy anime jokes. I actually really like Bob, though that's probably an unpopular opinion. He reminds me a lot of Bender, and I think many of the jokes based around him are really funny. But like with Boopkins, I think he works better as a side character rather than part of the main cast, considering he started off more as the Zoidberg of the series. And I love Swagmaster and Chris, who are the original characters. The whole dynamic is hilarious with how it plays on the cliché straight guy and idiot comedy duo. The entire Guards and Retards series is hilarious. It just, unfortunately, didn't get the same level of recognition as the main series. And thankfully, they haven't really changed over the years. Aside from the semi-recurring thing of Swagmaster being in love with Sonic, which goes against this whole perverted mind. But they are essentially minor characters within the main series. However, part of why I have at least somewhat of a positive reception towards those characters is probably because they are kind of based on existing video game characters. Fishy Boopkins is a Spike, Bob is a Garo from Majora's Mask, and Swagmaster and Chris are generic guards from GoldenEye on the N64. So they are still technically parodies, they just have original identities. Meanwhile, with all the characters who are completely original, or might as well be, they fully embody all the problems I summarized before. Even looking outside of them being unfunny, they aren't good characters in general because they're so bland. Let's start with the most notable of all, who I consider the catalyst for the issues I've grown to have with the series. Meggy. I've always found her to be such a boring and unfunny character. Even back when she was an Inkling, she wasn't even a parody, since she has the exact same personality as any other Inkling, just with more dialogue. So it always bugged me to see her get constantly pushed to the forefront and made one of the main characters, in which she then became the Min Min of YouTube. The girl who everyone loves, despite not doing anything to warrant such popularity. They absolutely refuse to do anything funny with her, being that she lacks a stupid, ridiculous, or flawed personality, and is never involved in anything like slapstick, for example. She just flexes on everyone with her athletic and shooter skills and her lame tomboy attitude. I don't think I've enjoyed any Meggy-focused episode because she's such a boring character that it makes me feel bored and left with a painfully neutral impression. Yet she still gets the center of attention, with Luke and Kevin practically simping over her. They even gave her a fucking movie before anyone else! For a long time, I'd say that I had an agonizingly average opinion of her. But nowadays, I fucking hate Meggy due to certain behind-the-scenes factors.
She's a bitch!
So now, I skip over any episode that has Meggy in the thumbnail. Next up on the list is Psycho, who is like a combination of Meggy and Boopkins when it comes to my thoughts on her. From the get-go, I found her to be very unfunny, but at the time, I figured that was the point given her initial role. But then, they found a way to butcher her already basic character to make that issue even more prominent. She worked way better when she was an antagonist, as she's supposed to be a, well, psycho. Since becoming part of the main cast, she's now just this generic girl who occasionally gets a bit aggressive, making her even more bland. Again, I don't think I've enjoyed any episode focused on her because her lack of humor does not work when being centered on in a comedy series. I didn't even like her debut episode because the title makes you think it's going to be a parody of Doki Doki Literature Club, something like a If Mario Was In video, for example. But in actuality, the episode had nothing to do with Doki Doki aside from Psycho being a dating sim character. The rest of it is a by-the-numbers crazy ex-girlfriend story. Which begs the question why everyone is okay being buddy-buddy with her when she tried to kill them multiple times in the past. And for the last of the boring OG girl trio, there's Tari. For starters, her entire existence is just one big advertisement for MetaRunner. Then there's the person underneath the advert. When she first appeared, I thought I might like her because she's a gamer. But nope! She's literally just two unfunny jokes that get constantly repeated for her whole screen time. Either she's too shy to do anything and says, "Oh no!" or she's distracted by rubber ducks. That's it. While you could argue that they repeat jokes of other characters, like Mario loving spaghetti and getting naked, they do different things with it and put a spin on it to keep the joke funny and entertaining. Plus, those obviously aren't the only jokes those characters make, and they're funny in the first place. Unlike Tari, where they don't do anything unique with her jokes. With these three, it actually would have been way better if they were just one-off characters who never appeared again, rather than being main characters who get many episodes about them that end up being bland and forgettable. This also applies to the other, slightly lesser original characters like Shroomy, Axel, and the Anti-Cast, as they're officially called, where they have boring personalities and/or just several jokes that get constantly repeated. They even turned the freaking melon into an OC! For fuck's sake!
You're all the worst supporting cast ever!
You know, it is possible that I could have tolerated the original characters if they didn't replace the characters that are actually funny. You know what I said before about how I didn't like characters like X, FM, and the other alternate colored Mario YouTubers being effectively removed? Modern SMG4 is like that on steroids. So many of the funny characters who helped make the series what it was, and even some who have been around since the beginning, have been severely pushed to the side and almost flat out removed to make room for the shitty new ones. Toad, who was basically the show's Squidward, hardly ever appears nowadays, and when he does, he's given a very minor role. Bowser and Peach don't really appear that much now, aside from the occasional episode. The Teletubbies are effectively gone, as their only modern appearances has been as background NPCs who don't do anything, rather than their previous sociopathic violent acts. Even Luigi and SMG4 himself feel like they are being pushed to the side, as the originals are slowly starting to make more frequent appearances than them. Hell, even Mario, the main character, appears to have been sidelined, as there are multiple very recent episodes where he has less than a minute of screen time. It almost seems like Luke and Kevin want SMG4 to be a fully original series rather than a spoof, but but for now, just throws Mario in at the last minute so they can keep the name. And if they do end up doing that, then it will be the complete death of the series for me. Speaking of them making changes to the show for the worst, in 2018, they started to introduce story arcs to the series. When I first noticed them doing this, I was actually pretty excited because I thought it was going to be like the multi-part episodes from the past I've really enjoyed, like Mushroom Wars and A Super Mario 64 Fairy Tale, but expanded upon. However, the execution is, well, I'll explain. So the first was the Waluigi arc, which is the only one I think is good. I liked most of the episodes of this arc because they felt like your typical good SMG4 episode. They were funny and had the same kind of ridiculous storytelling I enjoyed in the past. Plus, the idea for this arc was spawned from the memes of Waluigi not getting into Smash Bros, so it stayed in line with SMG4's meme-y nature. My only gripe with this arc was that I felt one or two of the episodes were a bit overly serious rather than funny, which then became an increasing issue as they did more arcs. Next was the Rapper Bob arc, which honestly felt like they decided to make it an arc at the last minute. It starts off with a bunch of episodes that have no connection to each other whatsoever, until it's suddenly revealed later that Bob had something to do with all of them. This then leads into Bob getting a rapping career and making a diss track until he loses everything. The whole plot was so lame and half-assed, with most of the episodes being super uninteresting. The only one I really liked was the Well one. I was shocked to see that this is officially classed as an arc because of how poorly developed it is. And then we reach the most infamous arc amongst many fans. The anime arc. At the time the episodes were coming out, I didn't really think much of them. I thought, okay, we're doing this now, and went along with it. But in hindsight, my opinion of it has certainly gone down. The premise of it leading into anime characters trying to take over sounded like it had the potential to be funny, but they made it way too serious, with many of the jokes falling flat partially because of the tone they set. Then they made it even more overly serious when they did this. They killed off a character. This pushed the seriousness way too far, as it was so out of place for this kind of show, and still is despite making other serious videos later. What made this worse was the really bad writing around this plot point. In addition to fucking up the mood by quickly going back to jokes like Shaggy versus Goku, and now it's sad again, was the exact handling of Destiny's death, which were things I even thought of at the time. For one, Desti was never an important character, as she was only in one episode prior to this arc. Yet they treat it as if she was, by making out that this is some massively devastating loss and that we'll never see her again. Second is that in her one prior episode, and even during this arc, Meggy and Desti hated each other's guts. But now they suddenly act as if they were best friends, with Meggy becoming a sobbing, traumatized mess from her death. What?! Their rivalry did become more friendly in the episode before Destiny's death, so I could see Meggy developing a bit of a mutual respect for her and being a bit sad by that, but not like, I don't know how it can go on. It's simply bad writing to make it more emotional when it shouldn't be this kind of emotional to begin with. Following the ending of this arc, Luke and Kevin made a video where Kevin said they wanted to do more serious storytelling, which has become another issue of the show, as even a bunch of the standalone episodes are serious and melodramatic. I don't know why they think a series like this needs to be serious, as it distracts away from the humor, thus leading to more boring episodes. Going back to The Simpsons comparison, back when The Simpsons was good, they were able to include plenty of heartfelt moments without sacrificing the comedy. That's not what SMG4 does at all, where instead it feels like someone's turned on a light switch for the mood or has next to no comedy whatsoever. And for the most recent arc at the time of this video, there's the YouTube arc, which suffers from a similar issue to the Rapper Bob arc, where it seems like they haphazardly made this an arc but then had no idea what to do with it and thus rushed the ending. I liked the early episodes of the arc because I found them funny, whilst appearing to be disconnected. Then it went downhill in the second half when the actual conflict of the arc lasts for so little time despite having an interesting premise, then goes immediately into the resolution with it ending off on the War of the Fat Italians 2020, which, to me, is the worst War of the Fat Italians ever. It contradicts its core idea of Mario and SMG4 competing in stupid challenges by now having it be the main cast against SMG3 and the anti-cast. And the only challenge I liked was them trying to guess Susan's surname. With how they execute the story arcs and the big changes in tone on top of the previous problems I've had, it really feels like the series has lost its charm that made me love watching it in the first place. Though it doesn't stop there. As with the existence of Glitch Productions, the entire channel now feels super corporate rather than being made for fun. Almost every single video that is uploaded now starts off with Luke and Kevin promoting something they've made. Yes, I know about MetaRunner. You don't have to remind me every single time. And these promotional segments, especially the MetaRunner ones, where it's simply the next episode is out, go on for way too long, which takes up a noticeable portion of the video and makes you think the episode is longer than it actually is. If I was in this position, I would just make the advert a several second long tease like what movie trailers do on YouTube. Not make an E3 presentation out of it! Even the channel banner is an advert for MetaRunner, despite it now being uploaded on a separate channel. You know, for anyone who isn't a fan of MetaRunner, I'd imagine all these adverts would get very annoying. Oh wait, I don't have to imagine. 'Cause I'm one of them. This also goes back to all the stuff about the original characters getting far more screen time. Since they are fully original and not based on copyrighted characters, they can make merchandise off of them like plushies and figures to also advertise on top of other things they promote like t-shirts. They even made this one video on Hobo Bros titled An Important Message, with a serious looking thumbnail that makes it look like they've been cancelled or something. Even though all the video is about is them saying they're taking a break. And what's the first thing you see when you click on it? Buy the new MetaRunner backpack! They literally clickbait you into an advert. This corporate nature may also be affecting the episodes themselves on occasion, as I'll now go over the only If Mario Was In episode I straight up dislike, despite me really enjoying most of those videos. If Mario Was In MetaRunner. The video's entire existence is just to be a promotion for MetaRunner Season 2. The events of the video are just an abridged recap of Season 1 filled with mostly unfunny jokes when the whole charm of the If Mario Was In series is to have Mario fuck everything up and parody the media he's been thrown into, and I had to listen to Meggy's shitty voice. And on the subject of Meggy's voice, the whole reason why they gave her a human form and hired a stuck-up actress to play her is so she can have her own series on Glitch Productions. Safe to say, I'm not touching that with a 10-mile pole when it's released. Their entire business and promotional strategy just screams greed. Now, the final thing I want to talk about in this video is Luke and Kevin's treatment of the older episodes. Going back round to the humor being worse, a lot of the dark comedy found in the previous eras is all but gone now, such as the whole Luigi being gay thing not existing anymore, and now he's just wimpy like his game counterparts. In addition to how this further correlates to many of the modern videos being uninteresting, as they replace them with these very safe jokes that are, once again, unfunny most of the time, on Hobo Bros, they've done a couple of reaction videos to the older episodes where they repeatedly say, we'd never be able to get away with that now. Well, more accurately, it's what Kevin claims.
Dude, we could never do anything like that in 2020, man.
Sounds a little fatalistic to me, but I guess that is partially to do with YouTube's bullshit demonetization rules, where it's like, you swore once, so you're not allowed to make any money. However, I don't bother to follow those rules because I think they're a load of shit. So I don't see why SMG4 should do it too, when part of what I enjoyed about it at first was how rebellious it felt with its sense of humor. Unless they do really want money despite all the merchandise. Even then, I don't think that's a good excuse to completely change the way jokes are delivered, as, for example, swear words on their own are not funny. It's how they're used that can make them funny. So I don't see why they can't keep the same level of punch to the punchlines like they did in the past, just without the swearing. Furthermore, through those reaction videos, I get the impression that they see the older videos as something to be mocked rather than honored, much less as a point of reference for how they can improve. One episode they reacted to was 0% of Spaghetti, which was from the very early era of episodes. The entire reaction is Kevin taking the piss out of the editing, completely ignoring that it is a very old video. And at the end of it all, Luke sounded so defeated and ashamed of what he had made.
Well, the editing was awful, the humor was something, and...
That's something else I want to touch on. With everything I've covered about the direction the new episodes have gone in, it's always been Kevin saying these things, not Luke. Now, this is in no way intended to be a hit piece against Kevin, but I can't help but feel he may be at least somewhat responsible for what has happened to the channel. I know Kevin started writing for the series around 2016 and gradually became more involved over time, which sort of correlates with when I felt the quality started to decline. Additionally, on Hobo Bros and a lot of the channel updates, Kevin is basically doing all of the talking and presenting and is at the forefront, while Luke is more in the background, hardly speaking. There's also the time with the Big Chungus episode, where Luke initially didn't want to make it because the meme was dead at that point, but Kevin persuaded him into doing it anyway. All this stuff makes it feel like this is Kevin's channel now, rather than Luke's, which makes me concerned that Kevin may have taken up a bit of a dictatorial role, with Luke being stuck as his yes man. Which is especially problematic when you realize that Kevin hasn't seen any of the episodes released prior to him joining on. All those reaction videos? That's him seeing these episodes for the very first time. So if what I'm theorizing is even remotely true, it would appear that Kevin is enforcing his own vision of the show without taking into account what came before and made people like the channel in the first place. That's everything I need to say about my current feelings towards SMG4. When I reflect on the past couple of years of watching the channel after figuring out I wasn't enjoying the videos much anymore and why, I think because I had been watching it for so many years at that point that I trapped myself in this delusion of believing the quality was the same because I didn't want to believe that this channel I've effectively watched for my entire teenage life was going downhill. Yet once I had broken free of that delusion from seeing the older episodes again, I've started to feel more and more frustrated towards the channel as I see them doubling and tripling down on the issues I've grown to have with the series, such as adding more original characters like Melanie and pushing them to the forefront too. Every day, I feel myself slowly inching closer towards that unsubscribe button, where part of me doesn't want to do it, but if things keep going the way they are, then it will probably become an inevitability. So with that, I'll see you guys for my next response video. Eventually, over a year and a half's worth of pent-up rage shall be unleashed. Because I, the Metal Blade 5, have a dream. To tear this piece of shit to shreds!
We're in for it now.